1600s and think good versus evil and this character, John Lee. And I'm going to let the author explain more about this, but learning about what Boston was like and what Massachusetts and Connecticut and these different tribes that were involved in Indian wars, and then witchcraft thrown in between. And many of you know I grew up back east, and I talk about that and talk about what it was like, not in the 1600s, but what it was like in tracing roots and seeing things that happened in the past. And this book really puts you in the middle of something. I think it's spectacular. And that's one of the reasons that we're talking to this author. She's written this book, again, so well written, called The Darkness at Dawn. Pamela Roberts Lee joins us in Author's Corner. Pamela, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for letting me come on.
So I set it up, the year is flat out 1600. Tell us about the book and why you wrote it.
Well, The Darkness at Dawn, if you take a look at the title, it's kind of an oxymoron. But actually, The Darkness at Dawn refers to the fact that the English were heading, and that is the Puritan English, were heading to Massachusetts Bay, where a settlement had taken root during this early period, around 1630 in the late 1620s. And this settlement had taken root, and so all the various churches, their ministers, were bringing them to this Puritan haven at the time. And the ships had to travel through some pretty stormy weather. Many of them did, and in fact, in this story, the ship that John Lee, who is my ancestor, John Lee, was on, and he was a 13-year-old boy at the time. And I found all the information about this particular ship, which is the Francis, and I actually have all the names of the passengers, where they're from. All this information is widely known because all this stuff ends up on the Internet. The reason why I wrote this is because my grandfather, who was, very eclectic, he read a lot, he taught me how to read and how to read stories and how to write stories. And so my head was full of all these things as I became an adult and went into the Air Force and had the opportunity to actually go to some of these places and actually see what it was like. I remember, I guess when my husband and I met, Matt, if you're interested in where the cover to the book came from, he created that himself. So it's a very, very good cover and has received a lot of accolades. And that represents the graveyard in Farmington, where most of the things take place in the story. So the reason why I wrote the book was because I grew up knowing about my ancestors, and when I went to work at the Department of Justice as a trial attorney, I was able to even gather more information, and actually all my former colleagues at the Department of Justice Environmental Enforcement Section have bought my book. So there you go. So, go ahead, Kate.
What did you find out? It's so fascinating. What did you find out that maybe surprised you? Because like you said, you can dig this up. You did massive research. What did you find out maybe that you didn't know about John Lee? Just about everything, Kate, because I didn't know much about John Lee at all. And then once I started the research and I found how much the people of Farmington in the 1870s admired John Lee. In fact, the cover of the book has the monument that they built for him in that cemetery. And all around it are all the other tombstones that were in place at the time they put up the monument to John Lee, because they saw all the tombstones and how washed out they were, and you can't read them, and so they wanted to have a more lasting memorial for John Lee, and that was something that when you stand there and you look around at all the tombstones there, and also in Hartford, there's a great cemetery in Hartford where some of my other ancestors are buried, and so the whole story is. And the title came from these cemeteries and these people and the darkness at dawn. And dawn was when they were settling this new world. But the darkness was the evils that came to them when they got there. And one of those evils, of course, is the villain, Richard Hawkes. And so as I tried to come up with a title, that's what I settled on, and that's how I got there.
Yeah, in writing the story and weaving the tale, because now you have this research, you know the story, you have this incredible cover, and obviously the love the people had for John Lee. What was it like wrapping the story and the characters together? And obviously, and I mentioned this at the top, of good versus evil.
Right. And, I knew that just knowing about my ancestor was not going to be enough of a story. I mean, like, okay, this is what I did, this is what I found. And there are a million books like that, I'm sure, out there somewhere. I didn't find them all, but I found a few. But so what I did was I knew that I had a hero, but I also knew that I didn't have a villain. And so the great creation of the book, I suppose, is Richard Hawkes, who is bright, sharp, and evil. And those three things were woven into the character because it was just, it all came together. And then I had to figure out, and I remember doing this when my husband and I were in Hartford doing research in the Hartford Library, and I remember putting this all down and trying to think, now, okay, so they don't like each other, and they're going to be at each other's throat through the rest of the book, so now I need to figure out in an outline form how that develops. And so it gradually came together, and I'm a big outliner, and that's because I was a trial attorney, and when I was at the Justice Department, and I was a military judge when I was in the Air Force, judge advocate, and all of this training in putting together a story, and that's what you do when you try a case, is you put together the story from the perspective of who you're representing, even perhaps the government you're representing in that case, or you're defending somebody who's been charged with a crime. So I knew how to put the story together, and I knew that Hawkes had to be powerful, and I knew that physically early on he needed to be more powerful than John Lee because of the difference in age. I mean, I think John at the beginning of the book is 13 and Richard's 19. Well, if you've been 13, you know that a 19-year-old was an adult to you when you were growing up. So, because John sees Richard steal their church's chalice on the ship, and because Richard sees that John had witnessed that and threatens to kill Grace Newell, who is another ward of John's guardian, William Westwood. And a lot of these people traveled that way. In fact, in the materials that I discovered, it specifically says William Westwood's two wards, were John Lee and Grace Newell. And so, but you don't know much more than that. And so you have to kind of work in the relationship. And William Westwood was somebody that helped John grow to manhood in the period of time in which he was living in Hartford, and then later when they moved to Farmington. So, there was it was a lot of relations that had to be developed, and in order to pull it together, I needed to have a good outline, and I think it does have a pretty good end, and it flows pretty smoothly throughout. In fact, some of the people that have done the reviews, and I'm not talking about professional reviewers, but I'm talking about people who read the book after it was on Amazon, and they write their comments. And if you go there, you'll see the comments are, for the most part, very, very positive. And some of the things they comment on are how readable the book is, and how it's possible to move through the chapters so quickly because the chapters are brief. And that's something that I learned as a reader, was that the longer the chapter and the more the chapters, the more I kept flipping ahead to see when the book was going to end. and because you get tired of reading that stuff. But no, they give really good reviews, and I think for almost the first year the book was out, it had 5 stars on Amazon. And all it takes is one review that's not 5 stars, like say 4, to drop a little bit, and that was kind of frustrating because when you see your book drop, a half a star, which is what it was. It's 4.5 now, I believe. But when you see it drop, it's like somebody hit you in the back of the head or something. Wake up! You don't understand how bad this book is. But that's not what they were saying. No, they wrote good reviews, and the reviews are still coming in. And so, I learned that writing the book is one thing, but then understanding your readership and how you're going to be able to, to work with that readership. And but I read a lot of really good books because the ones that were 5 stars were the ones that I tended to read while I was writing the novel.
Exactly. And the book is so well written. There's no question about it. The Darkness at Dawn, Pamela Roberts Lee. You'll get lost in the story. Pick it up on Amazon. Pamela, thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience, Kate, and thank you so much.